So today we're going to be creating Snickerdoodles from my ebook, Small Batches, Big Flavor. And first we're going to start with creaming our butter. This recipe calls for 1 cup of butter that's been softened, so it's been sitting out in the fridge for about 20 minutes. Now normally with most of our recipes we use brown butter, but for the sake of this ebook, we're just keeping it simple. That way it can be accessible for everyone in case you're not comfortable with using brown butter. So we're going to take our 1 cup, which is 2 sticks of butter, and we're going to cut it up into these nice cubes that we can cream more easily in our mixer. Now that we've got our butter, we're going to take our 1.5 cups of sugar. And we're going to go ahead and start this creaming at 1 or 2. Making sure you lock your mixer so that it doesn't pop up. After about 30 seconds, we're going to turn it down so it can kind of cream together. If you don't have a stand mixer, you can always use a hand mixer. You can also mix by hand, but that'll make it a lot more difficult, and your ingredients might not blend together as easily. So I'm going to stop it here and use a spatula to kind of scrape things down so that they can get properly combined. I'm going to scrape the creamed mixture down all around the sides of the bowl. That way we make sure that all the ingredients are getting creamed together properly. Scrape that spatula and start it again, this time on 1. You want your creamed mixture to be nice and fluffy. You don't want any big chunks of butter in it. If you have big chunks of butter, you can have big chunks of butter in your cookies, which will not only mess up the consistency, but it'll also mess up the flavor. So it takes a little bit of patience. We're going to stop it again and we're going to scrape it down. We're going to let it go on 1 for a minute, and then we're going to have to turn it to 2 to really get things mixed in here. And at this point, it's all kind of grabbing together, the sugar and the butter, and that's what we want. That's showing it got it nice and creamed together. So we're going to stop it. And as you can see, you've got a good mixture here of your sugar and your butter that's been creamed together. So it's going to be a really thick consistency without any visible butter clumps. And that's another reason that it's good to cut up your butter, because if you put your sticks of butter in whole, it's going to make it a lot harder to get that cream in there to get it how you need it to be. So now that we've creamed our butter and sugar, we're going to add in our eggs and vanilla. So typically at Cookie Connection, we use a gourmet vanilla powder, which is a different conversion that we'll talk about later on our page. But for today's purposes, and for the purposes of the ebook, to make it more accessible to everyone, we're just going to use the standard good old imitation vanilla. That way we can keep it consistent for everyone. So I didn't pre-prep this one since it's liquid. But for this recipe, we need 2 teaspoons of vanilla. Get that in there. And we're going to go ahead and take our 2 eggs, and we're going to go ahead and dump those in. It's always a good idea to pre-crack your eggs and put them in a bowl. That way you make sure if you do get any shells in there, you can take them out before they kind of contaminate your mixture that you already have. So we're going to break that down, and we're going to put it on 1. Let it kind of get mixed in there, get the egg yolks going. Once it starts to combine, we turn it up to 2, so it can really get in there and get combined. At this point, it kind of looks like mashed bananas. Stop it, and I'm going to scrape. It's really important, as much of a pain as it can be, to keep stopping your mix and scraping down the sides. It's a critical step, because if you don't do it, again, you're not going to get everything properly combined, so your cookies won't all turn out the same way. Some of them might not have all the right stuff. When I first started making cookies, I didn't know about this, and I would get these cookies that were, some of them were kind of falling apart in parts of the cookie because they had spots of just pure butter that wasn't really mixed in, or just clumps of sugar, and nobody likes that. Alright, we're going to turn it back on 1 for a second. Just kind of get it in that groove. And then we're going to turn it back on 3 to get it mixed really well. I'm sorry, 2. And now lastly, we're going to turn it on. so it gets nice and smooth. We don't want any clumps in there. Okay, now, let me just refresh my ebook here. Now we're going to do our dry ingredients. It's always a good idea to do your dry ingredients in a separate bowl, kind of like scraping down. If you were to put your dry ingredients just dumped into your wet ingredients, the dry ingredients are going to grab onto the wet and form clumps. So again, you're not going to have an even distribution of your baking soda, your baking powder, all that stuff, your flour, in your cookies. So better to take your dry ingredients and do them in a separate bowl, whisk them up really good, and then you can add them into your dough. The other thing is you never want to over mix your dough, especially once you've combined your dry ingredients. So by mixing them separately, this helps that. So we've measured out our flour using our scale. If you don't know how to measure your flour with a scale, we've got another post on how to do that. It's super simple. A scale doesn't cost very much. It's about 10 bucks on Amazon. So for this recipe, we need 330 grams of all-purpose flour. You can use enriched flour, you can use whole wheat flour, whatever works, whatever you have. So we've got 1 teaspoon of cream of tartar, our Snickerdoodles, and we've got half a teaspoon of baking soda. We're going to take our whisk. Now this can be a tricky part, especially considering where your mixer tool is. If you go to, especially in a bigger bowl like this, if you go to dump it in, it's probably not all going to go in the bowl. So what I like to do for these smaller batches is just take one of these measuring cups and just get a little bit of that at a time. We're going to put this now, we're going to lock it, and always start on one when you've got flour in the mix. Otherwise, the flour's going to go everywhere. So we're going to get it just till it's barely combined. Now, if we're making a cookie that had some sort of additive like fruit or some sort of chips, toffee chips, chocolate chips, peanut butter chips, candy, whatnot, this is when we would want to add it to. So you can kind of see here how it's just barely combined. Out of your flour, I would keep it on one because you don't want to mix your dough. Okay, we're going to do this one more time because we've got a little bit up here that doesn't have the flour mixed in. You always want to check the bottom too because the flour mixture likes to hang out there. And again, when I first got started, I would have kind of dry cookies at the top and think, oh, this is weird, and then get all the way down to the bottom and just have really wet, gooey cookies that, of course, are going to turn out really flat and just not be right. So want to make sure that that flour and everything that stays at the bottom gets properly mixed in too, without over mixing your dough. So we're going to mix one more time for about 10 to 15 seconds. It's getting mixed in pretty well there. All right, so now we've got our dough made, and we are going to go ahead and form our dough balls, and then we're going to stick them in the fridge. After we form our dough balls, we're going to take our beautiful sugar cinnamon mixture for these Snickerdoodles, and we're going to roll our cookies in that before we stick them in the fridge. Okay, now we've got our cookie sheet with our Gorilla Grip silicone mats. I really love these because they help prevent your cookies from sticking or spreading. They're 10 bucks, about 10 bucks for a pack of 2, which I get, things add up. So you can always use parchment paper. Do not use wax paper. Again, I learned that the hard way. I could not understand for the life of me why my oven was smoking, and finally figured it out. Google is a great thing. So we're going to go ahead and I'm just going to take our dough off of here. Use my spatula. Work smarter, not harder. Okay. So we're just going to get our dough off of our little mixer. Not sure what this tool is called, to be honest. So if you know, please comment and let us know. Okay, we're going to go ahead and take them off. Now, at Cookie Connection, with all of our cookies, our classic cookies, that is, we weigh them out. They typically weigh 5.5 ounces. Sometimes 5 if they're going to have a topping or a filling. But for these, we're just keeping it simple. Simple holiday cookies. So I'm just going to take a little ball and roll it around in our nice cinnamon sugar mixture.